When was the last time you stuck this mother on?
I'm fresh off it. I mean, I've just watched it,
Yeah.
today, this afternoon, and you told me that I was coming on this about 3 weeks ago. I watched it. Yeah, so I've watched it twice in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
This is also one of those films that when I was at university, I wrote some obscure essay around it, and so watched it sort of on repeat several times, and then
Yeah.
also, watched it. It's one of those films that I must have watched, possibly 20 times. It's one of those films that's just endlessly rewatchable for me.
Yeah.
And as I said, like what has been starkly obvious to me when I watched it just now and just the other week is to if if they released it, if this film came out this weekend, I don't think
Yeah.
nobody would bat an eyelid. It just looks like a contemporary movie. It fits the zeitgeist of today just as much as it did 30 years ago. The style, the cinematography, the way that it looks, that it could just be released today and nobody would say a thing about it, except obviously Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman look quite young.
Yeah, that's just CGI.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is. I don't really like. I'm not one for really getting into the numbers. Not dollars anyway. I really couldn't give a shit. But it is a unit of measurement that people do use
Yeah.
for the success of a film. And this is a film that was made at the time on a budget of about 34 million,
Right.
give or take. Which apparently, blah blah blah, carry the one in 2025 is something like 70
Hmm.
in today's money. This film went on to gross 327.
Yeah. A big hit.
Um, yeah, a sleeper hit, as they call it, because
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
it wasn't billed as a hit. It wasn't expected to be a hit. They didn't really push it with the advertising and spamming all that cash. They just kind of let it ride and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Hmm.
And that's what happened, which again, to convert it to today's money, give or take, something like 675
Yeah.
million. So whichever way you slice it, a huge profit, a huge well
That's
done.
it. And that put Fincher on the map.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, I mean, this is coming on the back of Alien 3.
Yeah. Which is technically his first film, but also
Yeah,
it's sort of one of his children that he kind of disowned in a way. I mean, I don't think he really he shot the film, but he didn't really direct it. They kind of got him in as a gun for hire, and then they didn't really give him control of the story or anything like that. So I think he pretty much would sooner forget about that episode and to come back, with Seven after that. I think he said himself that he didn't, he was close to jacking the whole filmmaking business in after that experience. So for him to then go, maybe that's why Seven is such a dark and morbid and has such a terribly sad and low ending to it, because
yeah.
that was probably Fincher's way of saying to Hollywood, "This is what I think of you," kind of thing.
Just general opening thoughts on Seven. What's
Um,
you?
I'd want to call it a modern masterpiece, but it's not modern. You know what I mean? It's brilliant. You know what I mean? I'm sure I've caught part of Johnny saying how it stands up today, and it does. You look at it, and it's beautifully done, beautifully shot, beautifully lit, fantastically acted, fantastic story, well written. Chef's
A
kiss.
monthly budget of around 34 million,
Mm-hmm.
which even converted in today's standards at something like 70 million is still a cheap ass movie.
But
Just
that's the
goes to
good thing
show.
about those kind of films, though, because those kind of films have low budgets because there's no massive special effects. There's obviously a bit of practical set dressing and props and stuff like that, but for the most part, there's no explosions and car crashes and car chases and things like that. It's all atmospheric,
Yeah.
almost like a horror film, really. Do you know, you've just got the setting and the atmosphere. It's
Well,
that kind of thing. So you
this,
can budget down.
I'm glad you said that. This is the thing I wanted to do. I'm going to put you guys to work, right? But it's good work. It's work that you'd want. if you guys are working in the Fox and Hound video store, right? So what section are we putting Se7en in? Are we putting it in the horror section? Are we putting a thriller, buddy cop? What?
Thriller
Where do we
for
put
me.
It would be a thriller, yeah. It's not quite horror.
Horror inflected thriller. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
in a
It's a procedural detective film as well, by the books, that kind of thing as well. So
It's one
yeah,
of those things.
different things.
Yeah, just because it's a horrible scenario and situation doesn't make it a horror film.
There's horrific things in it. But
Yeah.
And there is a monster, so to speak, but he is just a man, and it's more of his actions. Well, you see the aftermath of his actions, don't you? You don't actually see him perform any of these things. In fact, the only person that you see get killed is him in the whole film. Yeah. And I think what you said about it being a modern masterpiece, I think that's fair to say. Even though that's what we were saying before, even though it is 30 years old, it could be 3 days old. It's still exactly. It could come out tomorrow, and no one would bat an eyelid. It'd just be accepted for what it is. It doesn't look old. Doesn't feel like it's aged at all, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the only sort of difference to like saying it's a modern film is lack of smartphones. That's literally it. But for the most part, you know what I mean? It's like I said, stands up as a modern contemporary film.
Yeah.
So this was 1995, directed by David Fincher, written by Andrew Kevin Walker. Written because as he moved to New York in the late 80s, and with all the rising crime and shootings and death and everything all around him, and not being too hot on that, and on top of having a shitty job in Tower Records, which he despised. So he wrote the screenplay for Se7en with all that shit going off in his head, which makes me think. So it could have gone one of two ways. He could have wrote Clerks or Se7en. It could have in a parallel universe somewhere.
Imagine if
There's a really dark version of Clerks and a really funny version of Se7en, perhaps.
Yeah, if Kevin Smith had managed to get his screenplay to David Fincher, it would be a different film, wouldn't it? Definitely.
Fuck. Pitt's coming into this. I want to say on the back of Legends of the Fall would probably be.
That sounds about right. I know that he went from filming this. He went straight to the set of 12 Monkeys.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was that era. It was popping off at that time.
From Howard Shaw, no less.
Howard Shaw?
Spell, kids, it might be from Lord of the Rings, little trilogy you may or may not have come across.
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't draw the line. I saw it on credits the other day that it was Howard Shaw, but it didn't strike me immediately as that's who did Lord of the Rings. But wow,
yeah, this guy he did a shit ton of work with Cronenberg.
Really?
Almost all of Cronenberg's films, barring one or two.
That's cool.
And he's done at least 6 Scorsese movies. So I mean, it's kind of an in-demand.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Out a particular scene or element that is like a favorite. Maybe is there a favorite kill perhaps or something? One of the.
Let's start with the favorite kill, and then we'll go on to adjacent sort of scenes and things like that. Johnny, do you want to go first, Mum?
Yeah, well, the one that I think the most haunting one for me, the one that sticks in the mind the most, and probably the one that takes me back to the first time I ever saw the film, is got to be the sloth. It's got to be the guy who's been chained to a bed for a year.
Yeah.
Kept alive, had his hand cut off, chewed his own tongue off.
Just had the worst. On a line in his eye. Yeah.
Yeah. And the doctor's lines afterwards when he's saying, this man's suffered about as much as any human being I've ever encountered, give or take. And he's still got hell to look forward to. I thought that were a good line.
Yeah.
That sticks with you because you mind. But once again, the brilliance of the film is what it suggests than what it shows.
Mm.
And the more you think about that, the worse it gets. When you just contemplate what actually has occurred there, and the fact that it was all methodical, and he wanted them to come in on that day after a year. And wow, this guy is really patient and insane.
This is, and of course, these are practical effects.
Yeah.
I mean, not just practical effects, but we're casting a real life human being. We're putting out a casting call for a very low weight human being, and then asking him to lose a bit more. And then having him lay there for
Yeah, they used it was like gelatin or something, and the guy that made the sloth, the messed up, I think it was 8 hours in makeup before that scene, and he had to be transported to the set in like a refrigerated truck, so that all the gelatin that was on him that they were using didn't go off. And he had to lay there, and they said that the actor McGinley, the guy from Scrubs.
Yeah.
It was like one of the guys who was standing over him with a gun, and he gets right close to his face and he says, "You got what you deserved." And then he goes, and then they realise he's still alive. Like, there was always the rumour that they didn't tell him that it was an actor, and they didn't tell him that it was. But I think I also heard David Fincher say that that's bullshit. Like, there's no way they could have got that guy in there without anyone noticing. Like, everybody knew that there was a guy. McGinley's an actor, and he was acting. Would you believe it?
Yeah. That's ultimate method acting. If you just laid there motionless for hours on end waiting for the scene, that's what Christian Bale would be doing.
Yeah, yeah. Christian Bale would have tied himself to a bed of rail. He would have cut his own hand off.
For me, and the comments sort of support this. Obviously, taking that one axe, that would have been my top choice, the sloth one to start with, but it'd have to be the lust one. It's awful. It's that's horrifying, that one. But it's suggestive, and it's
the power of suggestion,
aftermath and the cerebral side of it, where you've got to sit and think about what they're talking about and what they're describing, and look at that and piece it together. Oh, awful. And it's Ray Parks, I think. It's the chap.
The actor who the guy who's absolutely been broke.
Destroyed. And Jesus, it's awful, that scene.
pretty down there.
The aftermath of it, because Seven's one of those films where I think this is why it makes it more of a thriller than a horror film. It's more cerebral, and it just makes you think about it. Rather than see it and viscerally experience it, you're going to take this with you. You're going to live with having seen all this and think about this. And once you've seen Seven, you don't forget it, do you? And I think that's another one of those things. You think about the PTSD that all these people would have, and you kind of have as well from watching and going through it with them. It's like, Jesus, it's awful.
Yeah, so again, in order to pick something that's not sloth, then I guess would it be is Wrath, John Doe's death, and the symbolism of everything that means, the culmination of his entire plan, making this
it's a masterpiece, isn't it?
Sacrificing himself for his crazy ideas, knowing that he wasn't gonna live through this. He's not going to write a book. He's not going to sell the movie rights. I
think that's made more interesting as well by the fact that Mills and Somerset scuppered his plans by turning up at his apartment. So his original plan was not to do that with Mills, and so he had to change his plan and made that his plan. He pivoted, and so genius.
Yeah.
They got his apartment, they got all his stuff, they got all his money, and he still managed to flip it around and get, is she called Tracy Paltrow?
Yeah.
I think she's called Tracy. Yeah. His pregnant wife, and Mills to become Wrath and tie it off in a nice bow at the end. Yeah,
What's
brilliant.
in the box? What is the box? Oh,
What's in the box? Now
what's in the box?
that's one of
Question of a
those kind of
generation, man.
that's one of those sort of like Mandela moment kind of things where there's this whole bunch of people that are convinced that they see the head in the box, and
Oh,
they've seen some cut, some version of seeing the head in the box, which does not
I,
exist.
it
You've never
doesn't. It
seen
doesn't come on the screen. They did. By all accounts, they did make a head.
They
It
did.
was one. It was one possible way they were going to go, but thankfully they didn't show it. I think it's better that they didn't.
Yeah,
Um,
they chose. Yeah, they chose not to do it, which is way better. And apparently, the take of Morgan Freeman's reaction is the first take. I mean, they made him do about 17 anyway, because that's what acting is. But the
yeah,
one that was used
first
actually,
one.
apparently, is the first take that he did.
Yeah,
Morgan Freeman.
a genuine surprised reaction. Yeah, from seeing Gwyneth Paltrow's severed head.
Yeah, apparently they put the Fincher being Fincher, and attention to detail being something that he's gone on to be world famous for. That even
Yes.
though they didn't use the Gwyneth head that they had made, but when the box is delivered, they did. I don't know how they work it out, but they did work out what Gwyneth's head would weigh, and there were weights in the box of that weight, however many it was, £3 or something like that, maybe, I don't know.
A
With,
£3 Paltrow head.
with a wig on, with a wig on, just in case, like, if some tape got stuck or whatever as he's opening the box for
Yeah,
the filming, then at least you just see a bit of hair or something, and that
yeah,
might be relevant. So just to cover his, and just so at least Freeman sees like hair in the box, so he can kind of guess it's a head without actually having to see the head. But they bothered to weight it, and even bothered to do whatever maths they did to work out the actual weight it would be. At
yeah.
1995, Seven became the seventh highest grossing movie of the year. Quite
Yeah.
fittingly. You almost want to, almost as if you'd tell people, stop going to see it. That's good. We've got that. Like, that'll do. Stay there. It'll be
love
better.
that comment there. Can I just read that out? I watched it far too young. Me and my brother rewound it when it finished and rewatched it. I don't even know if we really wanted to. And that just says it all.
For me, it's very rewatchable. I've heard people say that it's one of those films that you can only watch once or twice. You can't go back to it. But the thing that it's so well written. The main thing what I think gets overlooked is how well it is written and the texture and the characters. It's the character work in the film because again, I think that in its initial release, I think it got slightly more like the critics weren't so kind to it initially, and a lot of people said it had a bit of a reputation of being like, gory for the sake of gory. It's just a miserable film. But when you think of it, and that's why I mean, over the years, it's just got more and more acclaim because it's a lot more restrained than that. As we've said already, you don't see any of the kills on screen. It's not it's not a splatterfest.
Yeah.
Another director might not have trusted that script and would have just shown you everything, and it'd just be another bloodbath lunatic film with some detectives chasing him. You don't see any of that. The film's about these two characters negotiating this horrible, nondescript city that they're both stuck in. One of them's trying to get out. One of them's trying to get in. One of them's eager to get his teeth on the bone. And the other one's seen so much shit that he just wants to go and live on a farm and get away from it as much. And it's about the interplay of those two characters. And Gwyneth Paltrow's character is like the glue between them because they actually hated each other to start with. And it's Gwyneth Paltrow's character that puts them together.
That's so well put as well because just saying how like they were in contrast of one's coming in, one's going out. One wants to get his stripes, and the other one is literally so adamant he will not be a copper anymore. That's the idea of retire. He said it to lieutenant or whatever, doesn't he? It's like that's the idea. It's like I don't want to be a copper anymore, and they're so contrasting, but they've met at this knife edge kind of point of what's the chances of these two threads overlapping at this point? And I've never quite thought about them in such contrast before until you said that.
The characters are so well realised and obviously portrayed that's why I can watch that film
Yeah.
almost on repeat. Like I can just enjoy that constantly. Morgan Freeman, especially, I think is brilliant, beyond brilliant in this. Yeah, that's like the meat and potatoes of this film. But it gets obviously the stuff that makes the headlines and the stuff that everybody hears about is all the murders. But again, I keep repeating it. You don't see them. You don't see them. Most of it's suggested. Horrible things are suggested, and that's why it's more of a thriller than a horror. But it's a character-based procedural detective thriller, and that's why.
Can I just interject and just bring up, because we said it earlier, about his favourite parts in the film when we got onto his favourite sin killing kind of thing. But can I just bring up one of my favourite moments in it that's not to do with the killing? It's the scene where Somerset goes to the library, and the security guard's playing poker, and they put on the classical music, and he's sat there pouring through the books. Absolutely love that scene. Like I don't know what it is about.
It's from Culture for you, and he puts, is it Brahms or Bach on?
It's like, how's this for culture?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that scene, because can I give you my fun fact for the evening?
Yeah,
that the library that they're filming it in is the bank from The Mask.
Yep.
No way.
Because they couldn't find like an old timey looking library, because they felt that Somerset's character, he wouldn't just be in the local community library. He'd got to be in this gothic looking, old school library with the leather bound books and everything like that. But they couldn't find a place like that, so. Just so happened that they'd been filming The Mask. I think that's 95. I think it was the same time. So they'd finished. They either filmed The Mask after or before it. But the bank where what's he called, Jim Carrey's character works, that bank, if you can picture it, that's the same set.
No, now you've said it, it's I can see it now. I can see sort of where they're sat and where Cameron Diaz comes in, and so that's mental. That's quality. I like that.
Yes, I like the dinner. Or when they invite Somerset over for Tracy invites Somerset over for dinner. Completely over Mills's head. He's got no say in it. It's exactly. But when they come over, what is it like relaxing, vibrating,
vibrating home.
Yeah.
And they burst out
laughing. They all just fucking.
That's the great tension. That's the tension relief in that moment, and that's the moment that those two characters finally get on the same wavelength. Start working together. It's all because of his wife's character. She brings them together. She's like the glue. If it wasn't for that character in this story, these two guys would never see eye to eye. They would never see eye to eye, but they do because of her. That's the thing. It's great.
Yeah, it's like the scene that sets that up, where Mills comes into the office and Somerset's already sat at the desk and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I'll get out of your way," and the swap desk kind of thing. And then she rings and Mills is like, "I told you don't ring me at work," and he's like,
he just goes back to
you. It's
he just goes back to doing his work after he's put phone down. He's like, "What was that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I've been invited to dinner. I accept it." That is the DNA of that film. That's why that film's brilliant. It's that stuff. That is the stuff that makes it. Not the blood and guts and the horror. It's that stuff that makes it so good.